The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll cover today's huge announcement that the club has parted ways with both Nico Estevez and Rodolfo Borrell, and what that means for the future. And we'll have a very special guest join us for that discussion. We will also briefly cover the matches from this week that led up to these decisions, and we'll talk about a few other pieces of Austin FC news. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and before we introduce our guest, I want to follow up on the briefly covering the matches from this week, because 24 hours ago, I was really in my feelings about how bad this week was, and really not looking forward to recording a show that was mostly reflecting on the disaster that was the week past. And then we got to tear up all of our notes and largely ignore what happened. And we have a special guest on board to help us talk about that. So I think I could say now we're happy to be joined once again by Mr. Adrian Healey.
Landon, Jeremiah, my goodness. Didn't expect to be with you guys tonight. What a Monday morning that was. A cloudy May Monday morning, which held some massive surprises, didn't it? I've got to say, I didn't see this coming, but lots to get into as a result.
Yeah, we, Adrian, you and I ran into each other on the concourse at halftime the other day and got to chat for a bit then.
Yeah.
A lot has happened between then and now, including even in that stadium that night.
Right.
Which we'll get into all of that here. But before we jump in, Adrian, I think folks will know you as the former voice of Austin FC over the airwaves. You've moved on to other stuff. We've talked about some of it on the show when you've joined us, including your work with ESPN. Yeah. And then also locally doing some radio work with KUT and KUTX. You have a new venture since that has started. You and Coach Nick Cowell from St. Edwards have started a podcast. It's is it Beyond the Touchline? Do I have the title right?
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Yes, indeed. Coach Cowell, currently available, by the way, currently retired, but he... Because he's retired, he wanted something vaguely useful to do with his time other than hobble around the golf course. So he and I have been friendly for quite some time. We often sit together at Austin matches, and we talked about doing, following your guys' fine example and trying to launch a podcast. So we decided to focus more generally on the World Cup. So Beyond the Touchline is the name of it, but we've really been doing just shows leading up and building up to the World Cup. You know, that big tournament that no one's particularly happy about. But we decided to make that our focus just for the next few weeks. And we're really enjoying doing it. We don't know where it's going to go beyond that, but for now, loving doing it. So yeah, Beyond the Touchline's out every Tuesday as well.
I've been enjoying it as well. We've got some big guests, Ian Dark, Kurt Gomez, some other folks that people will recognize. And you all have a lot of experiences from coming from a lot of different sides of the game. So I think that the insights have been really cool so far.
Yeah, and actually for Austin fans, we have Michael Lahoud coming up. It's either this week or next week, doing all about Africa at the World Cup as well. So that will be great. So look out for that.
All right. Well, we have a lot to cover, so we better dive in. Jeremiah, do you want to start off with this press release that we got at, 10 a.m. this morning?
10 a.m. Yeah, for sure. I don't think that anybody was expecting both these bits of news, so we could talk about that for sure. But we get the notice that Austin FC announced that the club has parted ways with sporting director Rodolfo Borrell and head coach Nico Estevez, effective immediately. Have begun searches for next sporting director and head coach, and Davy Arnaud has been appointed interim head coach ahead of the club's next match against St. Louis City on May 23rd, which is the last match before we get to the World Cup break. I think the next parts of it, while the search for the club's next head coach is already underway, Austin FC has also retained the services of Excel Sports Management's executive search division to lead the global search for the club's next sporting director, which the nerds on the internet immediately went deep into who this firm was and who they may or may not have hired in the past. So I'm sure that we'll get into that a little bit later. And it basically, this 60-day midseason pause that begins the conclusion of the match affords the club a chance to implement a transition, position the organization for success. I think Davey is 1-0 as a head coach, so interim head coach again. He's back in the same seat. He'll get a chance to do it again, but I think everybody was shocked. It was You said your job demanded a lot of you today on a day that wasn't very convenient for you. I had the good fortune of having a really light meeting morning and had just a wall of texts from everybody I knew wanting to talk about this and wanting to know if I thought it was a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can get into our opinions of it here in a bit, but I want to start off with just like reactions. So I think I was not entirely surprised to see a press release come out. I was not entirely surprised to see Nico Estevez's name on it, but I was pretty surprised to see Rodolfo Borrell's name on it. Was that a similar reaction from you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I came out of Saturday night thinking, well, have they learned their lesson? This is the perfect time to make a change if they're going to do it with the 2-month break looming. Things looked so desperately bad on Saturday night. Everything about it was just screaming for change. But I didn't remotely consider that was going to include Rodolfo Borrell, but really it should. I mean, this is both of them. But I didn't see Anthony Precourt and the ownership group taking such drastic action. But I'm going to slip an opinion in. I think it's great that they did, and hats off to them.
Soccer-wise, recorded this morning just in time to catch this news.
While it was going on, right?
Yeah. They ended up going in pretty hard on Borrell during their segment on it. Jeremiah, how do you feel about how they covered it? Do you think all of the criticism was deserved? I feel like I have maybe 1 or 2 points, even though I largely agree with them. I have 1 or 2 points where I feel like maybe they were slightly harsh to him.
I think generally it was deserved. I think one thing that came up on soccer-wise, like just from the stories, and then from just people in Austin FC community once this came out, like Borrell's approach did not make him any friends or get him any extra time. Like people, they seem on the show, and then like everyone else I've talked to seemed very happy to like pile on and talk about how terrible he was at his job, and like he was kind of I don't know if a bad person, but like hard to deal with, and maybe not good at communication, and maybe caused his exit from the front office. Like it was interesting how many people who hadn't really said a lot about this before were ready to really, really pile on. And I feel like that fits with kind of our observations we've had over the years. It's like he definitely owns this project now, and there's nobody else to blame it on. And it's either going to sink or swim based upon he's going to sink or swim based upon how the results are going. So I feel like he was absolutely tied to it, which we saw, and I think maybe that's why we get the announcement today of both of them being gone.
Yeah. Bogert cited agents around the league, and I would imagine around the world, not wanting to work with him anymore because of the way he kind of carried himself and operated. And then he also mentioned this, which I thought was interesting, is the amount of staff who left after he was hired.
Yeah.
I had heard some things about like maybe these people weren't happy and so they decided to go. I didn't want to like say too much about it on the show because you just don't know until you hear both sides of the story, right? Like new administrations come in, they kind of want to do things their own way. So I didn't know how much to buy into the whispers I had heard that like, oh, people aren't really happy with how things are going and that's why they're leaving. In hindsight, and what we're hearing from the guys in Soccer Wise and just knowing what we know about Borrell, I mean, anybody who watched a single press conference know that the man has an ego. And I think with all of that information, it doesn't come across as super surprising that would be the case, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's been at the helm almost exactly 3 years. And have we increased, have we improved to the level you would want to do in that, because that's not a short amount of time at all in football world over. 3 years is a long time. It sounds crazy to say, doesn't it? But it is. And he'd never been a sporting director before. You think back to when he was hired, Josh Wolf was doing both jobs, and we were kind of desperate for anyone at that time. And here comes Pep Guardiola's right-hand man, and it seemed, a lot about it seemed, wow, okay, we're doing things and moving in the right direction. But his tenure will be judged on the hiring ultimately of Nico Estevez. That was his call. We assume it was his call. We have to assume it was his call. And the second half of it was not good. I think that's...
Yeah. So just to wrap up the bit about soccer-wise, the two things things that I would like to push back a little bit is we heard this when he was hired, and we've heard them say this on the show about him not understanding MLS roster rules. In conversations I've had with him, like in press conferences and then just at events where he was around and just like hearing him talk about this stuff, I don't know if he knew it very well when he was hired, but by the time he was on the ground doing the job, it seemed like to me, and I feel like I'm someone who understands this stuff fairly well. I've heard the same from other people who I think understand it fairly well, that they were impressed with how much Borrell understood about it. I do think that's not to defend how he used that knowledge and kind of the moves that he made, because I think there's still a lot to criticize there, but it did seem like he understood it. I think the other part, and this is maybe the bigger point where I will defend him a little bit, is Bogert and Doyle going after him about complaining about not having any GAM when he's the one in charge of GAM. The reason I'll push back there is the only way to get more GAM is to sell players. Nobody wanted our players because they were on such bad contracts from what Reyna did before. So I think it was a tough job. That being said, there's a lot of decisions you can point to, and I think we should do this now of where the GAM is not what hurt him. It's his own decision making, his own hubris that hurt him. So I wanted to go through some of Borrell's, I guess, like grading his overall performance and looking at some of the positives he did for the roster and then some of the negatives he did, and maybe putting it into perspective of like, okay, here's the totality of his work. How do we feel about it now? Starting with positives, y'all feel free to push back on any of these. I just kind of made a list, but his very first move that he made after he was actually here and kind of the Josh Wolf sporting director era was over, because there had already been some signings made by the time Borrell got here. But Diego Fagundes being traded, I know it's controversial, but I think at the time, some of us were saying this is probably a pretty good idea. And then in hindsight, I feel like almost everybody's saying it was a good idea, that was a bad contract. We needed to get off of it, and he found a way off of it. So I think that goes in the plus column. Any arguments there?
No, he was getting too much money in year 3. What we had him for in year 2 and what we had Driussi for in year 2 were perfect, but those Borrell did inherit much increased contracts in both those cases, and something had to give.
I also have getting $10 million for Driussi when he was holding the club hostage. Yeah, I don't know how he did that, but that was pretty impressive. So kudos there.
Have no idea when River Plate had all the leverage. They knew we were desperate. That is the most remarkable thing he did, actually getting our money back and then some for Driussi.
I have Mikael Dessler. Listeners will not be surprised there, but to get a guy of that quality on a free transfer on a pretty reasonable salary, I think that one's pretty squarely in the positive. I put Biru on this list. I think as far as Biru's overall impact, there's a lot of discussion to be had there, but for the value of like the talent to price ratio, I think this one is pretty squarely in the positive in my view anyway.
Yeah. Wouldn't disagree on either. They both have been great value for money.
Then I put Jaden Nelson. It was quite a bit of money, but I think a young, promising player, that what we've seen of him, if he can stay healthy and stay on the field, I think that one was worth it. Christian Ramirez, kind of a steal to get a guy of that experience and reputation on a supplemental roster spot for this season. And then I put Ilie. I think you could argue with that one. Was it the on the field? Was it what we needed the most? Or was he the right guy to fill that hole? Maybe there's questions there, but for the price we got him on and for the just kind of the weight he holds in the locker room in the community, I think that was a really positive move. Let's get into the negative ones, because there's quite a few of those. I would say all of his DP signings, essentially. So Ozuni, he's starting to come a little bit better now, but overall, I think you have to call that a failure. I think you have to call Bukhari a failure. And then for the other DPs, I mean, Vasquez and Torres, I think still TBD, but I think even if those guys start playing better or like able to make an impact, the numbers feel a little bit inflated.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess my question on the Uzuni and Vasquez deal is like, do we really think that they were really looking to sign both those guys separately, or is this the deal that like they both came together? 'Cause that still makes no sense to me. That you get those two guys as DPs during the same offseason on purpose,
do you think
unless
he did
he's
it by
just really
accident?
bad at his job. What? I think they were negotiating with both for the same role, and then they both came through, and so
If you could say no
That's what
until you can't, right? Like,
okay, then that's just more evidence he's bad at his job.
yeah, I mean,
Well, you don't need those guys on the field together. Sorry, I can say that. No reasonable person would do that.
Now, it's funny. You look at these names as you've set them out, Landon, and individually, you just look at them in a vacuum and like, oh, well, actually, that's not a bad signing. That's a very capable MLS signing at the right price. But it's really how do those pieces fit together? And that's where I feel the Rodo story falls down horribly, because the Uzuni Vasquez situation, didn't take a rocket science to figure out, well, hang on, we're signing two strikers. Who's going to get them the ball? And that is still the question we have a year and a half later. Who is going to get them the ball? And it's a question he never addressed. So it's more the signings he didn't make that I think are the ultimate sort of question marks hanging over Borrell's tenure.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, I think the list of good signings that I wrote down, or the good moves, whether incoming or outgoing, I think the list I made of positive ones is longer than the list of negative ones. But as you said, Adrian, the moves he didn't make and then the moves he did that didn't work, the impact of those are so much bigger than the positive ones that he made, that I don't think you can look at his tenure at this point as anything but a failure. And maybe I think we all had hope based on the good ones that he had made. Like, okay, he made some mistakes here. Hopefully he'll learn from those and do it a little bit differently moving forward. And so I think we still had some hope. But now that it's over, he didn't get that time. He didn't get a chance to do any better. I think we have to call it a failure.
Yeah. And you can't miss on the DPs, maybe 1 out of 3. But it's just that's never a recipe for success in MLS. You have to hit with them. And he didn't.
The one, Landon, the one you didn't player you didn't list that I think still has to be a TBD too is Joseph Rosales, and I think a lot of that comes down to like, what does the next coach do with him, and can we find the best Joseph Rosales? Because I feel like playing for Nico Estevez, he was never going to be positioned to be as successful as he possibly could be.
I think it comes down to roster build as well, and I think that's a great point. Is that like even the good players, Rosales is undoubtedly a very good player. I think you could argue about the value we got as far as like the money we paid for him. I don't think it's outlandish, but the guy's really good. But we didn't need him. Like, it wasn't what we most needed, and that's what he spent his time and resources on, was getting this player that is an awkward fit when you're trying to get your 11 best players on the field. So, some of the pieces aren't bad. It's just they don't fit together, and that's Rodolfo Borrell's fault.
And later era Rodo in his public pronouncements, which seemed to become fewer and fewer, by the way, guys, as time went on. But when he did speak, he would often say things to the effect of, well, I've signed these players. Now it's up to the coach to make it work, which really was jarring to hear. It's like, how are these guys not working together on exactly what they need,
Yeah, I always thought that was super odd, too. It's just like...
Yeah.
I just get the best players I can, and it's Nico's job. It's like, I don't think that's how it works.
Not if you want to be successful. No.
Right. Yeah, not if you want it to work well. One other thing, Adrian, you may not know this either, but you've been around the game for a while. So, like, when a decision like this is made, because when you fire a coach, the sporting director and the owner get together and talk about a thing. Like, what does that look like when you're getting rid of basically the whole front office staff? Is that Eddie Margain and Anthony Precourt go to coffee and they're just like, this is not working? Or like, what is that? Do you have any insight on what that looks like?
No, I really don't. It's a very rare, I can't remember another, off the top of my head, I can't remember another MLS situation where both have gone at the same time. Even in European football, it's really rare for them both to go, because normally it's one appointing the other. So yeah, I assume the ownership group and the outside team of experts that they've hired as well may have had some input, but it's a very good question. Were all the ownership group involved in this? Have they Did they learn their lessons from last time? Like maybe waiting too long to make a change? I don't know. But when both go, it's a real vacuum.
All right. Well, we have still a lot to cover.
Yes.
Including, we haven't talked really much about Nico Estevez. We haven't talked about the future of who might replace them and how long that might take. But let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and dive into all of that. Hang tight. We'll be right back. Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment that you can check out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balance. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Esperanza branch on game day, visit goamplify.com/moontower. All right, we are back. Before we jump into kind of the whys of Nico Estevez, and we'll kind of tie in our match recaps into that discussion, let's first talk about who might replace Rodolfo Borrell. So the club mentioned that they hired a consulting firm. Is it XL Sports? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
XL something. XL Sports Management. The Executive Search Division, XL Search and Advisory, if we're going to be really specific about which brand is helping us out here.
Whenever I think about these consulting firms, all I can think of is U.S. Soccer letting Greg Berhalter's contract run out, hiring a firm like this. I don't think it was this firm, but hiring a firm like this to do a coaching search and probably spent a lot of time and money doing that, and then just hired Greg Berhalter again.
Please don't remind me of that whole episode.
Matt Doyle pointed out on Blue Sky today that XL was the firm involved in hiring Gerard Niekamp, which he was in charge of the FC Cincinnati teams that led Jeremiah and I for the first year of this podcast to say, at least we're not Cincinnati. As to say, like, that team's so bad that they give us a little bit of solace that we're not as bad as them. He was the boss there. And then I can't remember the guy's name, but it was the guy who was in charge of San Jose during one of their worst periods ever. It was also then mentioned that they were in charge of finding Axel Schuster at Vancouver. So not all negative, but also not a 100% hit rate.
Right.
Some of the names that were mentioned on SoccerWise, I think they said the first one that we should be calling is Garth Lagerwey. So Lagerwey was the chief soccer officer in Seattle during this stretch of time when they were really, really good. He left and went to Atlanta. It was a little bit confusing, not as directly involved with soccer operations as he was in Seattle. It didn't go quite well, and then he ended up leaving for health reasons. As of, I think, I don't remember how long ago, but it's been announced that he is cancer-free now and seems to be healthy. Not sure how soon he'll be looking to get a job or if he'll try to stay in Atlanta and do something there, but he is technically available. I don't know how realistically available he is, though.
I was calling a Barcelona game a couple of weeks ago, and the camera panned to the crowd of one of the executive boxes, and it was a game that Hansi Flick wasn't coaching. I thought it was Hansi Flick in the second, but actually it turned out it was Garth Lagerwey, because I was doing the game with Casey Keller, and he was like, "That's Garth Lagerwey." I'm like, "What's he doing at the camp now?" But he was just hanging out watching a game. So he's it's an interesting name, because I guess the question is, I know you want to go through the rest of the names, Landon, but do you want your sporting director to have proven MLS pedigree already, or are you prepared in your search for the right man to make that a lesser requirement? Because Garth Lagerwey has so much MLS pedigree. It's the team he built with RSL were absolutely phenomenal, and they had a culture there that in a city that's not dissimilar to Austin in some ways, in size and franchise and money and everything. It's they built a winning culture, the like of which was almost unheralded at that point in MLS when he had Jason Kreis and they were firing their way to titles. So he has done it, but he's an older, more experienced guy, shall we say? So I don't know. It depends whether you make that a criteria.
I would say I do want MLS experience at this point. Jeremiah, do you feel the same?
Oh, yeah, I do. I was going to say, I think my general preference is going to go toward this next set of guys that are like people that are number twos at clubs that are model clubs. But I'm going to make an exception to that for Garth Lagerwey if he's interested in the job. I'd be like, never mind. Like, I mean, my preference would be to like find an up-and-comer who's built a system from, or been a part of building a system like from the academy level to the second team to the first team. But if he's up for the gig, I would change my mind.
Yeah, so let's get into these other names. And again, these are all kind of hat tips on this episode of Soccer Wise. And there's some interesting connections with a lot of them as well that I didn't realize until I was reading up on some of these guys. But one of the names they mentioned was Neil McGuinness. He's the number 2 at LAFC. LAFC does a lot, right, as far as their scouting and signing of players and kind of churning their roster over to make sure that they're bringing in allocation money and keeping things fresh and competitive. They have a competitive advantage that a lot of places don't. And so I think anybody coming from there would need to adapt a little bit with how they're doing things, but they do a lot of things really well. McGuinness was the director of scouting at the Columbus Crew from 2018 to 2023. So they had some really good teams in that stretch. Was a scout for Celtic in his native Scotland before that, and likely would have worked under Anthony Precourt. Whether or not that's a positive or a negative, who knows? But Precourt did bring a lot of his Columbus people to Austin with him. So as much as Columbus fans hate him, it seems like at least some of the staff liked working for him. And so there's at least a connection there. He has the guy's number probably. One of the others mentioned was Chance Myers, who's the number 2 at Nashville. They done a lot of really good stuff lately. Chance Myers is 38 years old and only retired from soccer in 2018. And so maybe you need to let him cook a little bit longer before you throw him in as the number 1 somewhere. That might make me a little bit nervous, just the lack of experience there. But another one, Asher Mendelson, who is now at Houston, but also spent time at the Crew during the Greg Berhalter era. I think some people would see the connection to Berhalter as a negative. He also spent time in U.S. soccer, which I think some people would see as a negative. I don't know that it necessarily is, but I think that would be the reaction by some folks. And then the connection to Houston, I'm like, okay, the Crew teams did pretty well without spending that much money. Houston, I think, is a bit more of a mixed bag lately, so I'm not sure how to judge that or like his involvement in it. But like you said, Jeremiah, these are the guys like who have experience working under successful people and are probably going to be looking to get one of these jobs soon.
Yeah, can I go out on a limb and just say, can we use this opportunity just to finally sever all contact with Greg Berhalter? I know that's it is what it is, but there's just been so many ties to his coaching tree and his staff that I just see this as an opportunity for a really fresh start to move in a different direction. I also think, let's not undersell ourselves, guys. It's fine looking at number 2s. I think this is so desirable. We'll get a lot of current number 1s who would jump ship and come to Austin. Let's not kid ourselves. This is going to be a desirable opportunity, especially if it comes with, yes, you can appoint your own head coach tucked inside, which it should. I mean, is that another discussion we want to have? Is this the appointment that needs to happen first before the coach?
I would be curious what names come to mind when you say that, Adrian. Like, do you have any names in mind that you think like would be, like feasible to actually tempt away from another club while they currently have a job?
No, I was worried you were going to press me on that, and I really don't have specific names. But my only point being that I just think sometimes we don't realize what an attractive proposition this team and club and place is, especially when it's coming at a time of a rebuild. So why not? Why wouldn't we be attractive to someone who's there are 30 sporting directors out there, well 29 now as of today, but there's plenty of good ones. It's not my specialty. I don't really kind of get into the weeds with front officers and sporting directors because so many of them operate behind the curtain. But I know there are good ones. I mean, even if you want to restrict it just to people already in the league, there have to be 10, 15 really good ones. And why wouldn't they be interested in Austin? That's the only point I was making.
The Soccer-Wise guys did mention Berhalter's staff, his current Chicago Fire staff as well, because he's kind of the head of all of it, but has some guys behind the scenes kind of helping do the signing of players and scouting part of it. Yeah. And so I agree with you. I would like to not have as direct a line drawn to Berhalter anymore. But also, if you just look at the guys that we just named, it gets hard. Like, MLS is riddled with connections to Berhalter, for better or for worse. And it gets hard to distance yourself at a certain point if you want MLS experience.
Yeah. It's the Bruce Arena coaching tree. It all gets traced back to that. And that's the entire league pretty much. So...
Well, what do you guys think about this Berhalter style where you have a guy who's both the sporting director and the coach? Do you like that idea? Do you not like that idea? Do you think that's a chance for maybe a coach that's in? I think about maybe like a coach that is desirable that wants to step up and have greater authority. Maybe that's a way to get them in. But I'm curious of your takes on that.
I would prefer not to. Yeah. Just because in modern MLS we've seen it go wrong more than we've seen it go right. The Crew seems like a perfectly respectable operation at this point, but he's not been there that long. And it also seems like he has people behind the scenes kind of helping him run that. So I don't think this is Peter Vermes 15 years ago where he legitimately is doing everything on his own. And so if it looked like that, maybe I could be talked into it, but it scares me.
Yeah, I would say there's only a handful of people who can do it in this league. We've already named two of them, Bruce Arena, Peter Vermes. You have to have had a lot of mileage in this league. Be very sure of yourself. Know the rules intimately. Oscar Pereira is a name that's come up who's done both. My preference would be no. Let's make it two very separate and distinct roles, but two people with great synergy that work together on the same, because I still feel we've never had that in the history of this franchise. We have not had a sporting director and head coach singing from the same hymn sheet, working from the same script to the degree any successful organization has. We've never had it. So I would love it to be two different people.
All right. Well, I think we have maybe talked about Borrell enough. Let's switch to talking about Nico Estevez for a bit. So listeners will know that we normally spend most of the show talking about the week's previous match or matches, what we saw and what we learned in them. But given the context of this news, we're going to do things a little bit differently, especially for how those games went. But with this news, it kind of feels like it doesn't matter as much now. So in a conversation in Los Verdes Slack, we were talking about this and how much should we cover? And I think Jessica Luther expressed it in a way that I thought made a lot of sense. And she said, I would talk about the games to mainly explain how we ended up here, how we ended up where we are today, what failed in the last two games that made the decision to fire them a no-brainer. I think that's a good way to approach it, where we use these games contextually in the events of the day without going through these very unfun matches for generally we're doing it to learn what's going to happen next. All bets are off now. We don't know what's going to happen next.
Nobody
knows.
These
games are going to have very little to do with what happens next. So I like this idea of how did these games lead us to where we are with these firing. So let's do it that way. Let's start with the San Diego match midweek. 5-0 loss on the road. It was a record number of goals on an MLS match day. And it was already headed that way before the Austin game started. And I was wondering, will this game play its part in getting this record? It did. Not in the way that we wanted, though.
No, not at all. I mean, what a disaster of a performance. And I think that was for almost everybody from like the 1 hour before the match, the match graphic comes out and people are like, oh, this is the lineup. What do you know? And I think I went back and listened to last week. We didn't even contemplate the possibility that there would be as much rotation as there was. And it was not great. Nobody performed well. You would hope that somebody who like finally got their chance to get on the field and get their minutes would play up to it, but nobody did. Yeah,
lots of these players were poor. We have to mention Besart Savovic here. Jeremiah texted you and the Craniolas a little screenshot of my notes from this game, and I believe it said something along the lines of, "Oh, it's good to see Savovic kept with his pre-match routine of drinking an entire bottle of NyQuil."
Yes,
that's right. What it looked like when he was on the field. Apathetic. I don't know. It's just he looked like he was zonked out, not paying attention to what was going on, does not know how to sprint, and players were having to cover for him for that in various ways. Like Duberstarsky was having to run more to get on the ball when we were in the build-up. Rosales was trying to cover for him in that regard as well. And then defensively, he was jogging 100% of the time, never sprinted once. The back line with Bell and Kolmanich especially were not on the same page ever. We got caught out a lot of times with San Diego's rotation on that side of it, and it just looked like that all night. We had some chances in this game. There were several moments we would break on the counter, and there were gaps there. And we talked about this in our preview to this game, that San Diego is not a bad team, regardless of what their record says. This is a pretty good team with some real flaws that we need to exploit. There were enough chances in the first 50 minutes of this game. Even we were down 2-0 at that point. And I was sitting there thinking, I think I said this out loud, let's make 5 substitutions in the 50th minute, and I think we could potentially like draw or win this game with the number of chances and how open San Diego was at the back. Then they scored the third goal right after I said that, and I was like, actually, never mind. Let's sub everybody off. Let's call this one quits. And that is the way they approached it.
What happened? Yeah.
Unless y'all have any other thoughts on the game, let's pivot to like how much of this game is Nico's fault, and kind of back to that premise of like, how did this game lead to the decision to fire him?
Well, it was just the latest example of lack of man management, lack of motivation. Listen, this was a 3-game week. It was the same for every MLS club heading into this 7-8 day stretch, whatever it was, and the rotation left us essentially spineless. That's what it left us. It was almost like, okay. And the message that sends to the players, that's what is the worrying thing. It's like, okay, well, not every game matters, we're almost prepared to give this one up. But that also had the knock-on effect of putting pressure on the home game on the Saturday, because then that almost becomes a must-win if you're gonna kind of sacrifice the San Diego game.
Yeah, Nico kind of gave some reasons / excuses for the rotation in the post game, and I understand where he's coming from with some of these. I mean, he ended up leaving Vasquez and Pereira at home just because of such a short rest from that away game. So away game on Sunday and then another away game Wednesday. With travel, you cut into recovery time pretty significantly with both of those. And so pushing guys who are fresh back from injury would make me very nervous. And it seemed like that was true for them at the time. So didn't want to push any of those guys. Okay, next man up. Who can go? And then Ramirez had played a lot of minutes, and so they didn't want to start him. So we get CJ Fodre starting at striker. The roster was not good. I mean, you can you can afford to maybe start a couple of these guys and still compete, but not 5 of them.
Yeah.
Like if you start this many of this level of guy, it's going to look like it did. And so I think part of this game is understandable. I don't put this one as much on Nico's shoulders. At the same time, it is his job to have a game plan and have his players on the same page in some regard, even if that means, hey, we don't have a chance in this one. Let's bunker and do some drastic things, make the game as ugly as possible, try to get out of here with a point. And we did not see that. That's not what happened. The team did not look on the same page. Even though the players themselves were playing poorly, the coach still has to take some responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Well, and this is also the post-game presser here is weird because, Adrian, you talked about, or both of y'all talked about how, it's weird for Borrell to say, like, I'm just a sporting director, I recruit the players, and then it's a player's job to it's the coach's job to, like, make them fit. Is this the one where Nico's, like, basically, like, I'm just the coach and the players have to care?
I think that was after the Kansas City game.
Okay, sorry. These are running together, which is okay. But that was, like, okay, that was super weird, and we can talk about that. We can save that now from Kansas City. But just, like, a lack of accountability, I feel like, across the week from Nico was a problem.
Yeah. And it's also, momentum, and it's this is the second time it had happened in 3 weeks with a midweek game on the West Coast. We've been soundly thrashed by San Jose and played off the park by them only 3 weeks previous to that, and then we go out and do it again. So it's a cumulative effect that starts to build up, and how he wasn't sort of alive or attuned to that is kind of part of his downfall, I think.
Jeremiah, are we good to move on to Kansas City now, or do you have any other thoughts on San Diego?
I feel like that's enough. It's enough about San Diego. And apparently I can't keep my thoughts together or separate about each one, so I may have another thought that was related to one or the other.
All right, so it's Sporting Kansas City. I spoke pretty boldly on last week's show saying that if Austin FC lose to Sporting Kansas City, Austin fans should be furious. And after the game, I was checking socials and checking to see if anybody was, like, bringing that back at me. Because, I don't know, I was afraid someone was going to take it as, like, me calling the shot and saying, like, oh, we're going to beat them easy. Not what I said. I said, if we lose, we should be furious. And it seemed like everybody was on my side with that one. So Austin blows another first half lead, whether that lead was deserved or not. Ends the game 2-1 and drops to last place. No, they lost to the last place team in the West, drops us to 13th. Is that right? This one, I gave some caveats for the San Diego match. Like, I understand there's some external circumstances that led to why that game looked like that. This one, I think, is more damning. I think you can put this one a lot more squarely on Nico Estevez's shoulders. Kansas City's not a very good team, and they were rotated in this game as well. They did not start Suleimanov or Manu Garcia. There's a couple other guys who were rotated out, so it was there, and we did not seize on the opportunity.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a narrow 2-1 home defeat. I mean, we just looked completely bereft of any ideas, inspiration. It looked like the players hadn't ever played together before. And Sporting Kansas City, we made them look, like they were. I mean, this was a team that had lost 6-0 just 7 days before against Portland, and Portland are no great shakes at the moment either. So, but we made Kansas City look terrific. Their movement off the ball, their passing, their interchanging was just at a different level to ours. And our body language was what really bothered me the most. The players just looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I mean, just awful body language. That was the point where I realized, the coach has totally lost these players. He doesn't have them at all anymore.
Yeah, so Kansas City was pressing quite high. They had 5 guys pressing us at times. And then when they had the ball, they were throwing numbers pretty far forward as well. So they're playing pretty aggressively against us.
Yeah.
And they were doing it with energy. And I think that was the main thing that they brought to this game, is that you could see like this Kansas City team, although they had a lot of the ball, they were moving it forward. Once they got into certain positions, their quality would let them down. And so it was like, okay, this team, although they're beating us, they're still not that good. There's a way out of this. And as we were building up, they were overwhelming our midfield with just those two guys in there. Facu Torres was leaving his post on the right wing to try to come in and help with it. You'd see Uzuni drop in and try to help with that at times, and trying to find ways to, the players were trying to be creative and find ways to break out of it. But with Torres kind of floating so much, there are times where we'd rotate the ball back around to the right side and they'd look up to the right wing and nobody's there because Torres had run across the field. And so there's some structural things going on. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we'll get to halftime. Kansas City will kind of tire themselves out. We can make some adjustments and come back out and beat this team because, again, they are not good. And we get the goal right before the half, which is very much against the run of play, but we do get the goal. Come back out, and I'm thinking the first half looks exactly the same. Sorry, the second half looks exactly the same as the first half. We have to score again because if we don't, we're going to lose this game. And time ticks on. We make some subs. They make some subs that make a big difference. And we look even less organized than we did before the subs. And they're able to get 2 goals off of it because we're just not covering people properly.
Yeah, you're so right. That's where they betrayed where they are. Sporting Kansas City was in front of goal. It was they didn't have any poise or confidence or composure at all, did they? And that's what kept us in the game up until the point where the subs make the impact.
Yeah, and that's a hard part for me because we sit where the guys are warming up, and so I'm looking at the players who are warming up, and I'm like, there are 4 difference makers on the sideline, and if we can just get 60 minutes in, everything will be fine because we've actually got talented subs. And then it doesn't happen. I remember looking up late in the first half and seeing that we were being outshot like 10-3. And I'm like, this seems insane that this is what is happening from us versus Sporting Kansas City. And the other note I made was I ran into Mike Crignola at halftime, and we were like, that was terrible, but we're ahead. And clearly we never blow points from a winning position. And then I was like, wait, never. And then I told Mike, I was like, but if we can just get to 75 in the lead, clearly we'd never blow anything after 75 minutes.
Right.
And we were up 1-0 at 75, and then we lost 2-1. So, like, all the things that we kidded about became true against a terrible team.
Yeah, this one, again, I think some of the players let themselves in the team down with their performances. Owen Wolf looked pretty rusty in this one. He gets the start, but there's some times where we would get through on transitions, and then Torres a couple times has a heavy touch. Wolf makes a sloppy play a few times and loses the ball. And so we are getting some opportunities and just not taking advantage of them. Not only that, but like actually turning it into a negative for ourselves at times in doing that. And so some things to not like against the players. But Jeremiah, this is where I think that quote you mentioned from Estevez after this game, somebody asked a question about motivation. And for his answer, I think the way he meant it, I actually agree with him. He said that if you need me to motivate you, then you don't deserve to be here. Like, you don't deserve to be a professional soccer player. On a certain level, I 100% agree with that. I think that part of it is like, I think some fans look at it as like, he just needs to give a really good speech before they go out. And I don't buy that part of it. But one thing that does motivate people and give people confidence is them having confidence in what they're doing, feeling good about what they're doing, feeling comfortable in what they're doing. And this team, when we have the ball, has very rarely looked that way. And I think that part is on Nico Estevez's shoulders. There's excuses with injuries, with the mismatched pieces that Rodo gave him, but end of the day, like, the roster we put out against Kansas City is more than good enough to beat that team, more than good enough to get some results in this league. And we continue to fail to do that over and over and over. And I think that's where Nico's role comes in, is just give these guys confidence, motivate them by giving them a game plan that they're comfortable with, that they go onto the field, they know what they're supposed to be doing, and they know their role in this group. And it so many times this season, including and maybe especially in these last 2 games where that just was not the case.
I understand what you're saying, Landon. I do. But it is an essential part of any coach's makeup. Is motivation's a wide term, isn't it? What does that really mean? Especially when you're talking about finely tuned professional athletes who you assume as a baseline are going to be able to go out and give their all. Well, that doesn't always happen, and there are many reasons for that, and a lot of it comes down to that sort of the coaching alchemy of getting players to perform for you, getting players to want to run through a brick wall for you. That kind of, I've got to perform at all costs, and the accountability behind that. I mean, it's all tied into club culture, and it's not just can the coach give a good speech before the game, because I'm sure he can, but it runs deeper than that. It's a deeper current of what is the club culture, and is it one of excellence, and is there accountability when things don't happen? Who's stepping up and putting things right? And that clearly has not been happening, and at least some of that has to fall on the shoulders of Nico Estevez.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremiah, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to kind of echo what Adrian said and just say, like, it's a lot of that's just about the other 6 days of the week or 5 days of the week when you have 2 matches. That's really what it comes down to. And having a plan. And this is the one where John Gallagher said we didn't all have a plan together, right? Or people didn't know what the plan was.
I think Danny Pereira said that. Maybe Gallagher did as well, but Danny Pereira said it in Spanish to We Are Austin TV. And this is one of like the beautiful things about Danny, is maybe he's a little too honest sometimes and doesn't know to hide his cards at times in interviews, but we get a lot out of him sometimes for that. And he said, I don't think we weren't really on the same page. And I think he was partially saying to try to put some blame on himself and like take some of the heat for saying like, I was a sub that came on and was supposed to communicate some of these things to the team. But I think it was also telling in that, why are you the person who has to explain all of this? I understand like subs, like changing tack in the middle of a game is hard in soccer, right? There's no timeouts. You don't get a chance to huddle up and do this. So it is hard, but that's the job. Like that is what you're supposed to be doing. And so there should be some shorthand, some muscle memory as to like, okay, in this part of the game with this kind of thing, this is what we're going to do. And Danny should be able to come on and say a few words to a few people, and everyone's like, all right, got it. We know what we're doing now. And that very much did not seem like the case.
Yeah, I was astonished when I read those comments from Danny. I'm like, well, if he didn't know what the plan was. But yeah, they've played as if they're strangers. They have. I mean, particularly going forward, and even defensively. I've got to say, defensively, we seem to have taken 2 or 3 steps backward this year. But in both directions, we just, the movement off the ball and knowing where your teammate's going to be, anticipating, all of that just seems to have taken a step backwards this year, from what I've seen.
Well, I want to ask you guys to go on to the next thing. Like, why now? Why this week? Why not wait a week before the break? What is it that makes this club make both these moves on this Monday?
Well, it's, I can't answer why this week rather than next week, but with that World Cup break looming, they're lucky in some ways that it is actually the perfect sort of artificial mid-season break where they can actually take their time now. And I hope they do take their time. I don't want to, I know fans are going to be like, we want to know who the head coach is going to be tomorrow. There's going to be incessant demands. No, but I hope they take their sweet time over this because they have to get it right. And that, to me, is the only reason they made the decision this week, Landon. I don't know if you agree. It's just, there's this 2-month time frame that you've got, and you have to have been. Go on.
We don't know why. It's all speculation, right? But I actually have a little bit of a theory here. in that they were, let's say they were going to fire Nico Estevez anyway. That was going to be the plan. I think maybe in that situation, you do wait until next week just for a nice clean break. All the while in the background, you are doing the work to find his replacement. What if that was the case and they decided after this point, like, actually, we're going to get rid of both of them and we need to start ASAP. And in order to do that, we need to like go ahead and make this announcement now. So let's fire both of them at the same time. Might not be how it happened. Maybe they were planning on getting rid of both of them the whole time, but I wouldn't be shocked if that were the case.
Yeah. And if you are going to make it a priority to get a sporting director first, then you do need that extra runway of time to do that, because you got to get that sporting director, and then he's got to. I mean, maybe it's all happening together. We don't know, but it's I'm delighted that they did make it. I didn't expect it. Certainly didn't expect it. Certainly thought it might come next week in terms of the coaching, depending on, or I thought he might get a last hurrah at St. Louis. Can you salvage something going to the break? But in some ways, they didn't want to allow that possibility. If they were committed to getting rid of Estevez, it was much better to do it this week, because if they'd have won next week, it would have made it a lot more awkward to do, and then you're stuck for another 2 months.
Do you have any tinfoil hat theories, Jeremiah?
No, well, I guess my biggest tinfoil hat theory, it's not a tinfoil hat theory, but I think this is something that's true. Every time there's a season of firings, the quicker you make the decision to pull the trigger on getting rid of whoever you're getting rid of, the further ahead you are on finding a replacement.
Yeah.
And you see this all the time, right? You see this one, like NFL head coaches get fired 1 week before the season ends because they want to get a 1 week jump on talking to all the same candidates that everybody wants to talk to. And I feel like that's where my head is on maybe why you go ahead and make this move.
So this brings up a point that I wanted to bring up is I saw some folks asking, with the Columbus Crew firing their manager on Sunday, do you think that had any effect on Anthony Precourt and company's decision to pull this trigger? My first reaction was, no, that's silly. Like, they are probably going to do it anyway. Like, I don't know that they think about all that the same way that we do. But I thought about it a little bit more. And part of it is, Jeremiah, what you just said, that a lot of these clubs are probably going to be reaching out to some of the same people, if not all of the same people, for interviews. And so we need to get in that line and start working on it now. The other part of it is Anthony Precourt. I don't know him personally. The things that I've gleaned from what I do know about him and things that I've heard about him is that he cares what people think about him. Especially like the whole Columbus thing. I don't think he understood how it was going to go down whenever, like, he was kind of put into place by MLS to kind of be the guy to do all of this. And I don't think he understood how ugly it was going to get. And I think it hurt him the way that it happened. And I think he looks at Austin FC as a way to, like, do it right this time. And with it not going well, I think you can look at the owners of some teams that the billionaires in charge of whatever and say, like, oh, they don't really care about this. I don't think that's true about Anthony Precourt. So maybe even just a little bit, he looks at Columbus doing something and pulling the trigger there, and he says, all right, I got to do it too.
It just had to be the Crew, didn't it? I mean, if, the union had fired their coach, would we be having this conversation? But I think it's a fair one. Landon, I do. I mean, what is this? The fifth MLS coach fired already this season. There's clubs lining up at this time of year. It's rare that this is the case, but I think there may be something to it. I mean, it's just ironic that it was Columbus, of course, who also fired their coach this week.
Let's get into some of the potential options for replacements. So, on social media, we put out a call for who our listeners would want to see. We got several shout outs for me and or the entire Moon Tower soccer family to be the next head coach.
I'll second that. Where do I sign up?
I appreciate the support. I think that would end poorly for everybody. So let's get into maybe some of the more realistic ones. Maybe some more realistic than others, but let's start Wilfried Nancy was the one that most people put in to this social media post, and I've seen that a lot of other places. I think there's questions to be asked about, like, okay, do we have the roster for Wilfried Nancy's style? And then I think the bigger thing is all of the people in the know have been saying Nancy wants to stay in Europe. He wants to do something over there, and he's probably not coming back to MLS. I know Jeremiah's answer. You would take him in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure, but it's like the same thing with Lagerwey. Like, there has to be a two-sided relationship, and I don't know that there is one there.
Another name that was put in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Adrian.
No, he's a very interesting gent, Monsieur Nancy. He is he's esoteric. He's very, in some ways, I think his personality would fit beautifully with Austin. He's different. He's a different cat, but he thinks very proactively about the game, and he did wonderful stuff in Montreal, did great stuff in Columbus. He had a disaster in Glasgow, which was an ill-advised move to about the worst possible. But he's kind of shrugged that off, saying, hey, that's just a learning experience. That was 8 games, and I'll just grow. So I don't know what he wants to do, but he definitely is one that would pique my interest.
Another one that a few people suggested is Gio Savarese. He's another guy that I like as a personality, would a fairly pragmatic coach in his day, and could, in the best of times, kind of use that pragmatism to get results out of a squad. At other times, it was maybe a little too pragmatic and a little too ugly, and people didn't always like that. I think the biggest thing for him is he hasn't coached in 3 years at this point, and has not been reported as like the finalist of a job or anything even. So that makes me worry, like, what do people know? Like, why isn't he getting looks in the league?
Yeah, very peculiar. This seems to happen sometimes to coaches who have a long, fairly successful run with one club, and then it kind of goes downhill at the end, and they never get another look. I've seen this pattern repeated in MLS. And when Gio Savarese got fired by Portland, I was like, well, someone else is going to pick him up immediately. He's had a great 6 years there. Okay, the last year was not fantastic, but he got them into 2 MLS Cup finals. I mean, he was a really good, and particularly good with the Spanish-speaking players, and very surprised he hasn't had another offer. I mean, he's working for Apple TV, isn't he? But I'm sure he still wants to coach.
Next one I've seen mentioned is Jim Curtin. He's been out of a job for, is it two years now?
Where he was 24, yeah.
Okay, yeah, fired by Philadelphia. Probably could have had any job in the league that was open over the last couple of years. And all reports have just said he's not interested. Like, he has kids that I think were finishing school, and he kind of wanted to stay in the area to see that out. Tom Bogert reported at the end of last season that he was in talks, or at least the Revolution were after him, and he backed out of it because of some family situation, and that was he was unlikely to take a job for the following season. So who knows if that's still true, but Jim Curtin is a coach who, I mean, another proven track record, a guy who was able to kind of make pieces fit, was able to do more with less, and he didn't have to have the most expensive roster. I would be concerned a little bit with, like, he knew how to work with youth, which is a thing that Austin has not really figured out quite yet. So would the style of play work with this group of players? Would he be able to kind of put those pieces back together in the way that worked in Philadelphia?
He did an amazing job in Philadelphia. Amazing. I mean, for a decade, every year he took over from 2014, I saw a lot of them in that era. They got better every year. I mean, exponential improvement every single year, improved under Jim Curtin until, they won the Supporters' Shield and then got to MLS Cup final. And again, it, went downhill a little near the end, but that tends to happen after long stays in any managerial career, doesn't it? The thing with him is he's a Philly guy through and through, and I think that's what you're referencing with why he hasn't coached again. I mean, he's so Mr. Philadelphia. It would take something very special for that to change. I think this is very special. I think this is something that he would be interested in. But is he the right guy? I don't know. But he's a fantastic footballing brain, and he's a real he's a real motivator too. I always loved talking to Jim Curtin.
The option, you've already mentioned this guy, Adrian, but the option that Tom Bogert said would be a good fit on SoccerWise this morning was Oscar Pareja. Jeremiah, what's your reaction to that?
I think he's a good I think he's a good option. I think a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, would have an issue with the fact that he coached FC Dallas for 4 years, right after we bring Nico Estevez and fire Nico Estevez. I think we're kind of done with it. And I mean, his Orlando career did not end in the best way possible either. So I don't know, I'm a little bit torn on it, but he's a solid.
Coaching tenures rarely end positively, though.
Yeah, I know. You either get fired or you die. Basically, those are your choices. So like for me, he's a solid option. You know, the people that when we look at realistic, which I don't think Nazi or Curtin are, and people who would make the team better, like he's pretty high on my list.
Yeah, my reaction is like it's not exciting, but I don't know that it makes it bad. And if we're looking at, okay, the Rodolfo Borrell experiment was this guy from abroad, doesn't have experience with the league, has this huge learning curve to figure out what he's supposed to be doing here. Oscar Pareja has the opposite, right? Where this guy's been around the league for a long time, was very involved with kind of the pipeline in Dallas, where they produce so many good players. Austin could use that influence right now, right? Where the academy has still yet to really produce top-level prospects. And we have a couple on the cusp right now that we'll see what they become, but it hasn't been to the level that some of these other teams are putting out players. And so having that influence, I think, would be interesting. He's not like he's not a guy who's super tied to a specific niche system or anything like that either. So I think he would be a little bit flexible as far as like what he's going to do with this set of players. But also his career on the whole has been kind of up and down, and he hasn't been super successful for extended periods ever.
No, he's taken mid-level teams to 2 or 3 years of good success. Dallas had a great run under him when they won an Open Cup and went deep in the playoffs. Orlando won an Open Cup. He does have a very good established relationship with Facundo Torres. I don't know if that comes into play, but he's an interesting one. He wouldn't be my top choice. I think his style of football, as you say, Landon, he's not wedded to one particular style, but it's not always the most progressive. But maybe that's what we need. I personally think there's going to be lots of interest from outside of MLS as well in terms of coaches. So maybe that leads us to a different conversation.
Yeah, and that's like option X, which is maybe the most likely option, which is someone we've never heard of that is coaching in Norway or the German second division or wherever it is. And people who coach know who this person is, but I don't know who it is. I'm guessing you guys don't know who it is.
Right. And that's where the synergy with the sporting director is so vital.
Yeah.
And if you're going to bring someone in from the outside, you have to have that sporting director who knows all the nuts and bolts of everything else. And that's actually, what I think I'd like to see happen is that kind of setup where you've got a sporting director who has all the intimate MLS knowledge, and you've got a kind of a head coach who brings his experience from somewhere else and can bring it here. That's what really excites me. Not that any of the options we've mentioned wouldn't be great and interesting too. I think they all would in their own way, but I'd love to see a completely fresh take on where we could take this Austin team.
One other name became potentially available as of today. So this news comes out, and then a few hours later, there's news that Pep Guardiola is not going to continue at Manchester City after 10 seasons there. It's not happening. Like, there's no way, right? So fans, don't get your hopes up. Don't think that's happening. But the thought experiment I wanted to do is, would he even be good? Like, I think I would be extremely nervous and would almost say, like, I don't want him as the coach here, because he's never coached a group of players that's not the best in the world. Every job he's had has been at a place where, okay, these guys are the top of the top, and he demands the most out of them. What is he going to do when John Gallagher is his option at left wing midweek when a guy gets injured?
Yeah. Landon, we've tried the Man City thing already. It didn't work.
It didn't work.
We're not going back there.
Yeah, I was thinking when I heard that, I thought about you may not remember this. Ted Williams was a manager for a little while for some really bad baseball teams, and he was not successful because Ted Williams, one of the greatest hitters of all time, couldn't deal with people who were bad at their job, and that's what Pep Guardiola would be doing if he was coaching Austin FC quite often.
You've heard people say that about Thierry Henry, right? Like he struggled coaching. He was like, just do it good. It's like, well, we're not
like
you,
me.
man.
Yeah, we can't.
Let me show you. This is how you do it. Yeah.
Adrian, you kind of referenced this a little bit earlier. Like, how attractive is this job? Like, how high do you think we can shoot here?
Very, very high and extremely attractive. And I think it's easy to lose sight of that when you kind of, you're in it day to day. It's like, well, who would want to come here? But I mean, anyone looking, I think MLS as a whole is still a very attractive place to come for coaches and sporting directors. And within MLS, Austin, if you're not talking LA or New York, Austin, it has such an amazing reputation worldwide that people will be intrigued by the opportunity here, and particularly because it's coming in at a point where almost the only way is up, isn't it? I mean, it's that as well makes it extra attractive. You're coming in with a chance to build, but the stadium, the city, the fan base. I mean, all of that it sells itself. And any coach is going to look at this roster and think, you know what, there's pieces here I can work with. Yeah, I'm going to want to bring in a couple of my own guys. There's a couple of holes to fill, but this is actually a pretty decent roster, sort of man for man. It just needs some sort of cohesive vision behind it, and I think it's going to be hugely attractive. I don't know how to quantify it for you, Landon, and say, well, it's more attractive than this, but not as attractive as that. But I think it's right up there. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here and living and breathing it. And I can't imagine, as I say, beyond your Miami, your LA, it's right up there with its luring capabilities.
It's a team with a good stadium, good training facilities, good fan base, and an ownership that so far has been willing to spend. So I think for a lot of those reasons, I think you're probably right. Not the most attractive, but competitive. Like we can make a pitch to some of these guys who are looking around and be preferable over a lot of other choices in MLS.
Totally right up there. And I just think that the status of the team at the moment is obviously what coaches be looking at, and they will look at that and think there's stuff to work with there. There's some basic ingredients. There's no reason why we can't be competitive.
All right, let's talk about the order of operations here, because this is something you've teased at least twice, and I think I read the press release right before we started recording. I assume we were hiring a sporting director first, and then our coach, and now when I reread it, it seems like that maybe is not in the same order, and I feel like you've wanted...
The wording is weird. It said that the coaching search starts now, and then we've hired this firm to search for the sporting director, which feels a little bit like, wait a second, are we going to do this again?
Yeah, which has not worked out for us so far. So, Adrian, this is your floor. Tell us how you think about that, because I know in the pre-show you wanted to talk about that, and you've teased it a little bit so far. We've recorded. What does that look like for you?
Well, to me, it has to be the sporting director first. It just has to be, and that's where we got off on the wrong foot coming out of the gates as a club and as a franchise. Those two appointments happened the wrong way around, and I think I'm on fairly safe ground in saying if Claudio Reyna had been appointed as sporting director, we would have not had the first coach that we had. But that was already done, and for us to move forward as a club and a franchise, you have to have those two people absolutely on the same page. Now, does that mean? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are scenarios where the coach can get appointed first, but they if that's the case, they almost have to happen simultaneously, or they already have some sort of relationship or knowledge of each other, because what's going to be required to be built is a culture, and that's where they're both going to have to be on the same page in terms of the details of how this is going to work. So it's more logical to my mind always to have if you're going to have a sporting director, and if they're going to be two separate people, then the sporting director has to come first, establish the vision, the culture of the club. This is the sort of football we're going to play in. This is the direction we're heading in, and this is my head coach who's going to be able to implement this on the field of play. I don't, it's not impossible for it to happen the other way around. It's just a lot more difficult. Now, do you have to? You could go in wanting that to be the case, but then if you're dead set on, say, Wilfred Nancy, and you have to make a snap decision, that's where it starts to get interesting, because if you don't have a sporting director in place yet. But in an ideal world, and given the fact that they've got this extraordinary period of time, I mean, they can take weeks over this if they need to now. I mean, the players won't be doing anything probably until early July after this.
And you would hope that the coaches in question have the time to wait as well.
Yes.
Where you can say, like, okay, yeah, let's start looking now. Let's have a list. Let's reach out to some of these people.
Yeah.
And then by the time we hire a sporting director, they say, hey, we've looked at these guys. Yeah. Do you like any of them? Okay, we've already started the conversation. Here you go. Go interview them. I could see a spot where, like, it going in tandem might make more sense would be if they're both in the league already.
Right.
If you're hiring Garth Lagerwey and Oscar Pereira, just for a random example, those guys know each other. They know what they're about. You don't have to do a huge, extensive thing. It's like, Garth, you like Oscar? All right, let's set up a meeting and talk to him.
Yeah.
But if it's like, if you're extending that further abroad, I think I totally agree with you that, it's, you need the vision to be aligned, and it's harder to do that if you do it in the wrong order.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of seasons are coming to the end. If you're talking about getting coaches from Norway or Europe or wherever, it's like these coaches are going to be available in the matter of the next few days. So it's it is the perfect time. But I am very intrigued as who is on their sporting director list. And who these consultants are going to lead them to. To me, it's almost the more crucial of the appointments, which sounds ridiculous to say it, isn't it? I don't know if it's more crucial, but it's we've not got that right. I don't think we've got either appointment right in the club's history so far. So we have to get it right third time around.
All right. Well, I think we should maybe take a quick break. We're going to come back and cover a couple of pieces of Austin FC news, and then do a quick St. Louis City preview. So hang tight. We'll be right back.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. Are you looking to score your next home? While rates are back to their lowest level since 2022, don't get caught offside in this market.
The right strategy can turn today's opportunity into your winning goal. If you're looking for Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, contact our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com. All right, we are back. It's been a long show. We have a couple more pieces of news to talk about, and then we'll do our St. Louis City preview. Jeremiah, where should we start with this news?
I think let's go with this persistent rumor that we've heard enough times that's probably real.
For years, right?
For years. Yes. Well, at first we heard there was this weird set of requirements that Austin might or might not ever make that maybe were real or maybe not real. But anyhow, we've heard enough people right now for this year that sometime later this season we may well see an Austin third kit, which has been described as a throwback kit, but like a generic-y kind of like throwback to the 90s in MLS and not throwback to the 90s in Austin kit. But they were also unpacking this in real time, and I don't know what you've heard and what I've heard. and whether they agree or disagree, and whether the people have told us that are okay with us talking about what we may or may not know.
I haven't heard enough to really give away anything, but just the thing that I think is pretty secure is that we are getting one this season. They did a run of them the last couple of years, I think, and very credible rumors have said that Austin's on the list this year. As far as the design, a lot of these teams have been doing throwback designs to like the early days of that club, like the first few years of that club. Can't do that in Austin. I don't think they would do a throwback to a different team, right? Like you have the Aztecs or some other teams that have played here. Given that it's not connected to this club at all, I don't think they would go that route. So yeah, it's probably just going to be a design that looks maybe kind of retro, and we'll say Austin on it. That's probably as much as we can deduce right now.
Yeah, one of the things I picked up on is, at first you used to ask me this, like at first we heard like, oh, if you sell X number of jerseys, then you get a third kit. And now it's come to like everybody else has had a third kit. Now it's your turn to have the third kit. So maybe that first bit of information was not completely accurate.
Or the rules changed.
Which is honestly probably the most MLS accurate position on the issue.
And I think it's probably worth explaining for folks who, if like Austin FC is the first or only team they've ever followed, that European teams do this a lot, where they'll have their home kit, their away kit, which are often pretty standard colors. Like that's not always true, but pretty standard to the club colors. And then this third alternate kit is usually where they have a lot of fun. And so like your general colorway can kind of go out the window, which I think is exciting, where we've been kind of beholden when you only have one new jersey per year. You can make it new, but you have to make it to where it is an acceptable alternate to your other jersey that's going to cross over. So you can't just do whatever you want. There's still some limitations to it, where this alternate one, in theory, you can have a lot of fun with it and do some crazy stuff with it. We'll see if that's what happens, but in theory,
for Austin,
it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for Austin, it's going to be like some very light thing, some kind of dark thing, and some version of green, right? It's like because like my favorite Liverpool third kit is a purple one, which is nowhere in Liverpool.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that purple kit is legendary.
Adrian, do you have a favorite? What's your favorite all-time Austin kit?
I still like the Sentimiento. Honestly, the minty shirt from our second year, and maybe it's because it's tied to that second year is the reason I love it so much. But I've honestly seen that shirt around. I mean, I'm spent quite a bit of time in Spain. There are Sentimiento kits in Spain. There are people that in Valencia ordered that Austin kit just online because they love the look of it. It's kind of unique. So I think it's still my tops.
The other thing we haven't talked very much about is that the 2026 MLS All-Star Game, presented by Chime, and like whatever. Sorry, I didn't know we had a sponsor for that. Is now open. It's open through Thursday. I think the thing that's relevant and interesting to Austin is that as of yesterday, the top 5 vote getters per position group includes one King Bradley Stuver, who I feel like is getting support from other places and not just from Austin, including I think Tom Bogert maybe listed him as his favorite for keeper. So keep filling the ballot box for Brad Stuver is my message there.
You can vote unlimited number of times, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of a cumbersome process to fill out the whole roster if you only care about voting for Brad, but it's worth it. Go do it. And whenever we had our original show notes together, we often end the games with things we liked, things we didn't like, and things we learned. One of my things I didn't like from the San Diego game is that was the day they opened voting, and people had been talking about Stuver as like, oh yeah, he deserves some credit here. And then the team in front of him is terrible, and they put 5 on him, none of which I don't think were Brad's fault. And I'm like, the rest of the country's going to see this and just say like, okay, Austin's defense sucked. It must be the keeper's fault. We're not going to vote for him. And I'm glad to see that's not how things have played out. And that like the greater MLS machine is kind of getting behind
is okay
promoting him.
One of the things I did like from Saturday was watching Brad scream at everybody else about how they were letting him down after that second goal. That was you don't see him get loose like that, and that was entirely deserved on behalf of the other 10 players on that field.
Should we get into our St. Louis preview here?
Yes. The most meaningless game of the year, probably.
It could
With a
be
coach
interesting.
that doesn't matter.
Well, it might be interesting for some reasons, but tell us about this watch party first.
Yeah, let's go with that, because this is away. It's going to be on Saturday at 1:45. Los Verdes is having a watch party at Austin Beer Works Sprinkle Valley, which I have not been to yet, but I hear is amazing. On-site parking, family-friendly, playground for the kids, outdoor TV, indoor TVs, the food trucks. I want to send a shout-out to Paris Barbecue, which is one of the 3 trucks with La Taquicardia and Rockies. Like, that is a dynamite barbecue truck that was parked at Batch on the east side near my office before, which I would sneak over to for lunch a lot. So I would say, whether the game turns out the way you want it to or not, the barbecue is going to be awesome.
I don't know Rockies, but I've had tachycardia, and that is also very good.
So, yeah, don't eat the day before. Get ready to stuff yourself. Eat 7 meals the day of the game.
Is that a new Austin Beer Works, guys? I only know it is. Yeah,
it's seems to be part of a movement. I don't have confirmation on this, but what I suspect is a lot of the places who say you're a brewery in the area of Q2 Stadium and you're not sure you're going to be able to afford your location forever, they've started buying up spots in cheaper parts of town as like permanent headquarters. And so Austin Beer Works and St. Elmo and I think a few other places have bought space elsewhere so that they can say like, okay, if we get priced out of this spot, we don't have to stop existing.
Okay,
All right.
so 2025. Yeah,
Let's
go
talk
to the
about
team.
soccer.
All right, 2025. Yeah, soccer. They were really bad last year. Missed the playoffs. A lot of turnover this offseason, both notable departures and arrivals. I think Joe Klaus, who still manages to continue to torment Austin no matter where he is one of the departures. I'm interested, like, what y'all see as far as from the guys that came in, who's been able to make a difference for St. Louis. The difference being marginal because they're 14th in the West, which I want to be arrogant about, but we just lost a 15th place team in the West.
We kind of covered this a couple of weeks ago when we played them, right? I think the biggest addition is someone who's already on the team, who is Edward Leuven, who has started playing and has been producing in the last few games. So they weren't very good against us last time we played them, and we were able to get a win. But I think that with fully healthy and kind of with him back into the full rotation of things, that it could be a different team, and especially on the road, that maybe with a little bit of momentum behind them now, I think since we played them, they've won twice and drew once, and the draw was on the road. So they have some momentum behind them right now. And just even with that group, inserting Leuven for a longer stretch of time, I think changes a lot of things.
Yeah. I was at the home game, guys, and he was clearly struggling a little bit with a little extra timber and fitness. I know there were some personal issues he'd had as well, but he still makes that team tick. I mean, he has from day one, hasn't he? And I thought, as well as that game ended for us, it could have gone in a very different direction had they taken that 2-on Stuver opportunity early in the second half, where Betcher somehow managed to miss an open goal. That game could have gone very differently at Q2. So, be an interesting test. Davey will get a week to work with them, and I'm sure the Austin will respond. But it's, as you say, it's 14th against 13th in the West. It doesn't get much bigger than that.
Yeah. What are we expecting from this group? Like, Jeremiah, you said it's the least meaningful. I don't know that it necessarily is. Like, it's these players' the last opportunity to like kind of show themselves, which I know a lot of them are on contracts, and it's not easy to get rid of any of them at this point, really. But this is going to be probably the first game that any potential candidates see as they're looking at like, oh, maybe I'm going to be at Austin next year. Let me tune into this game. This is what they're going to see. So I don't think there's nothing to play for. And also, like, any points at this point help you get closer to the playoffs because it's still not out of reach regardless of where we are in the table right now.
That's what I was going to say. Like, it really is meaningful for Austin because of the way last week went and the fact that, like, if Austin is going to stay connected to the playoff line, this is the kind of game you have to win to have any kind of opportunity. And so I can see the team caring about that. I'm interested in, Davey knowing he's here. I assume that Davey knows he's really here for like 1 week and probably not long term. Like, what do we think we might see out of what he does? You think he just rolls out basically this starting 11 we played last week on the Saturday was more or less the same one that won, that almost the 2-game win streak that was almost a win streak that we had. So, like, do we see him roll that out and use some of the kind of the same tactics, or do you think he tries to apply any kind of his own personal style to the way that Austin plays?
I think one of the tells on that could be how he uses Joseph Rosales. If he does have his own ideas, like using him in maybe a more conventional way, but it is still just a week, right? Like, I don't think he can change a ton. But I think some personnel choices could show it. And then also just looking at who's available. So I think, did Vasquez play 30 minutes the other night?
It sounds about right.
Yeah, about 30.
Wolf started the game. Vasquez and Pereira, I think, played around 30. So do we see those guys get the start? Like, does he want to push them at all? Or does he say, okay, there's one last game. Let's keep it easy. Let's play him 30 off the bench again. And then let them get up to fitness over the offseason. So I think those are some of the interesting looks. But yeah, like what if he puts Joseph Rosales at left back, a thing that Nico Estevez has still yet to do this season?
Yeah, I think given it's the last football they'll play for 2 months, I think Davey will be itching to start all the heavy hitters that he can. I mean, why not play them all? And see where that goes. I don't know what that looks like as a lineup, but I'd love to see Pereira and Wolf out there from the start. Love to see Vasquez out there from the start.
And this like idea we had, like, if Austin isn't going to have a primary chance creator, if you have Wolf, Pereira, Torres, Nelson all on the field at the same time, can they do it in the aggregate? And that's not a thing we've gotten to see yet. And so that would be very interesting to see those guys all get to work together for a little bit.
Yeah, I hope we do.
And then we've got a huge break after that. We're going to try to figure out some stuff to talk about. Now that we have a coaching search and a sporting director search, I think that probably helps us cover some time, huh, Jeremiah?
Yes.
But yeah, we're going to have an interesting break. Adrian, you're going to be busy during the break. You want to tell folks what you're going to be up to?
Well, yeah, I'm going to be ESPN's, as you know, the Fox sort of world have the rights to the World Cup. So we at ESPN can't show anything, but what we can do is do lots of programming around the World Cup. So we will be doing 2 daily shows for which they need lots of content, and they've decided in their wisdom that I should be their boots on the ground in Texas. So I will be standing outside of Jerry World in Arlington and the Houston Stadium quite a bit, providing my reports about what I don't know yet. But hopefully that will get me into some of the games too. So be a lot of I-35 and I-10 over the course of the World Cup. But hope to be at lots of watch parties with you guys as well. So when the football starts, I think everyone's going to actually forget about all the other stuff. Maybe not, but that's my hope anyway. I mean, the football does take over at some point, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be a busy summer. I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of, it's still a World Cup. So.
All right. Well, I think that about does it. Anything else from you, Jeremiah?
No, let's go ahead and close it out.
All right. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet, wherever you are on the internet, mostly Instagram these days for us. Sign up for the Patreon. We've got some designs being finalized for the hats, and so we'll be sharing those sometime in the near future. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review the St. Louis City match. And Jeremiah, are we allowed to say this?
We are. We confirmed today.
And we will be joined by team president Andy Loughnane to chat about the club's plans for the World Cup and the recent season ticket holder survey and a few other non-sporting related items. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
Thanks, guys. I'm Adrian.
We'll catch you next time.
Think for nothings, you never.
La gente. Oh my God.
Zula Chupa Boom Sauce.
Yeah.